practice. One of the objectives of this work and its teaching is to observe oneself, because self-observation is a method of self-change. The work teaches that people can change for the simple reason that we are all created in such a way that we are capable of development. We are created as self-changing beings, and change, not just anyhow, but in a definite direction. The work points out that we are created as self-developing organisms, like seeds, where a seed, of course, can quite simply remain a seed. However, it is also a self-developing organism, and any seed is capable of some definite form of development. The work, the universal tradition, and all esoteric teaching is older than recorded history itself. So we can place ourselves, through directed effort, into the right conditions in order to change. A seed must be planted in order to develop, have the right sustenance, air, light, and the necessary conditions to sustain life. It is the same with us, if we can become planted in the ground of esoteric teaching. This is not a fanciful idea, an idealistic idea, a pious idea, or a sentimental idea. It is a fundamental fact that given the right conditions, someone can begin to undergo change and become more than what they were originally created for. We were not created simply to live this life, because life does not develop anyone to any final degree. It is the first and necessary experience and only goes so far, to the formation of personality, our pseudo-self. But here it stops, and nothing more happens. So we have to be reborn. Anyone having attained the first and the necessary development of personality, of profession, craft, business, labour, civilian, civil or military duty, the good householder, a layperson, remains then undeveloped any further in any sense of esoteric teaching. The individual, having attained these life positions, successes or situations, then slowly begins to die. We all first have to become equal to life before we are able to advance further. However, it should be noted that many do not even get as far as this. Regardless, that is the first task, our earth walk, chief feature and life quest. Everyone must learn, get to know something definite from life before anything else becomes possible. They must be good at something, know anything, be able to do something, and be someone, even if it's simply a cobbler or a tailor. That is why, in this work, it is said that we must all start from the level of good householder. This work is not for useless people, or those that live on the being and vitality of others, because such are not at the level of good householder. The work can only begin with people that have reached a certain level of attainment in life and acquired life skills, who are not evil, criminal deviants, pathological, psychotic, addicted or perverted. This work is not for the average run-of-the-mill individual, people who might be dependent or maintained by others, for those who are entitled and expect something for nothing. It is for responsible individuals, for those who understand the difference between chaos and order, then see clearly that certain things just have to be done, however we might feel personally about them. There is a work definition of good householder given in the supreme sense of this stage, a person who does what is necessary in life, but does not believe in life. This is a curious phrase, and worth reflecting upon always, for many good householders so often believe in life, and believe that sooner or later life will become much better for them than it is now. They believe in progress, in spite of things such as they are. However, this impulse, the idea of it, really is one that takes a wrong and outwardly subjective turn. Progress is possible, but only through esoteric teaching, that second education which is offered to us all. An individual can progress within themselves. They can undergo a definite development by giving up what they have come to think that they are. This is where self-observation comes in, because John or Jane Doe, whatever personality has been formed by life, whatever life has formed in us, our opinions, our bias, our pride and conceit, etc., must gradually be separated from, through observing Messrs. Doe and Doe. In our case, it is the life-forged personality that must be observed by each of us, gradually, all of the time, and also at intervals, until something eventually separates from it. That thing that separates is what can grow through time till we no longer wholly regard the self as ourselves, as our meritorious life and virtues. I begin to see John Doe. He begins to see Mr. Wilson, who begins to see Miss Parfitt. She begins to see Mr. Taylor, and so on. That is, we begin to see what is not us, the self-not self that life has built up within. What we have hitherto solely regarded as ourselves and labelled as me, myself, and I. This method of slow, gradual shifting of the feeling of oneself begins with a deliberate observing of it, noticing oneself. It does not begin with going against the self. How would this be possible when one does not even know themselves? How can you go against something that you don't know? So it is necessary to begin with self-observation, carried out over many years, in fact, throughout our lifetimes. That ray of light, the conscious awareness arising from noticing oneself, which begins to enter the darkness and ignorance within, very slowly brings about change. This is the beginning of an inner development that the work refers to so often. Things may and do go on just as before for a long time. However, one notices them, and that's the difference. We are no longer asleep to everything. If they are observed often enough, continuously and at intervals, they begin slowly to change. We cannot alter ourselves directly. We can only do so by means of certain kinds of effort, which are shown to us. For example, the effort of non-identifying, not justifying yourself to begin with, and thinking secretly, what a fine catch am I? There is, too, the effort of self-remembering, which is the first effort of all, but very difficult. There is the effort of self-observation, the continued effort of living more consciously towards oneself, towards others in work, and towards the work itself. All this increases conscious awareness, where things alter after we become more conscious of them and grow more aware of them through observation, by noticing these things without criticism and then gradually separating from them. To observe oneself and then criticize ourselves at once is useless. However, if a person asks, how does one alter, or what does one ascend into, the answer is that everyone has something which they can become, if they practice work on themselves, and which they are destined to be. The roadmap for which is defined within chief feature, which leads to our path. This is perfecting oneself, a phrase in all teachings on esotericism and alchemy. If we observe, notice, and non-identify, we will inevitably begin to develop into what we were created to be, which is not what we become in personality, which is acquired self. A seed grows into what it was created to develop into, change into, and transform itself into. And so it is with humanity, which is what the work teaches about ourselves. This commentary is to remind us of what working on yourself, this practice, is all about.